everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael, and we're excited you join us for another adventure.
So today's amazing guest is Billy Keels. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Susie and Michael, thank you for the invitation. And I have to say it just from the very beginning, because I've been telling you all the whole time. Love everything that the two of you are doing and how many lives you're impacting and all of the action that you're taking. It's awesome. So thanks for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to a fantastic, entertaining, educational conversation.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much again for being here. And just to let the listeners know, I met Billy, I'm going to say about like 2-ish months ago. So he was a speaker at a conference that Jerome Myers hosts. And when I was looking at the guest list, immediately Billy stands out, right? It's like extreme long distance investor. And I'm like, what? There's more. There's other people out there. Like, what is going on? You know, like
we are not alone.
Yes. I was like, I need to meet him now, you know? So like traditionally me being me, did the LinkedIn stalking, and I was like, cool, we look like we're going to be really great friends, connect, message, hello, you know? And so like from there, I am just like forever grateful that you continued the conversation and that now, you know, you join our meetup and we have a great relationship now. So yeah, I'm just really happy that I found you that way. So thank you, Jerome.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Myers. Once again, there we are, always thanking Mr. Myers. He's just, he does that with people and connects everybody. So yeah, cool.
Absolutely. Billy, would you mind sharing with our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got started or why you started investing in real estate, and also share where you're living currently?
Yeah, so sure. And this is one of the things that, Michael and Susie, I appreciate about you as well, because you are also long distance investors, right? And so this is one of the things, like, I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, but I have called Europe home for the last better part of 20 years. So I started in France, I was in Paris and then Montpellier, and then I moved I had the opportunity to live in Sardinia, got into IT sales. It was amazing. And I've called Barcelona, Spain, my home for the last 15 years. So it has been absolutely an amazing ride, and all this, like I said, from a guy from Columbus, Ohio. So I never, ever planned on this happening at all. And as it relates to like getting involved in investing in tangible assets is what I like to say. And real estate is a big part of that, because real estate is really where it started for me. I, like a lot of people, after I graduated from college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I am a recovering perfectionist, right? And so I'm that classic A student, did all the things. Yeah, right. She's like, him too. And so as a recovering perfectionist, I did all of the things that I was supposed to do because I wasn't recovering at that point in time. And I was, wanted to climb the corporate ladder and was doing everything that I could to keep moving up. And I got the good grades in college. And then afterwards, I did what all really good A students do. I heard that you were supposed to be able to invest and you should max out on your retirement plan. So your qualified funds or your IRAs or your 401ks. And so I was doing that, right? And about 4 or 5 years into working, this whole thing called the dot-com bubble happened in 2000. And so I took a pretty big hit on my portfolio. And then I got this message from the financial advisor, hey, you know what, just ride this out. These things will come back. Let's continue to do some dollar cost averaging. And, eventually it's going to come back. And so I was doing that because I'm an A student and I was doing exactly what I was told. And then this thing happened in 2008. And I was like, well, hang on a second. I lost 33% of my portfolio in 2008. And I was like, one of the things my parents always told me is if something happens like once, shame on them. If it happens twice, shame on you. And so it was right around that time. And I can't remember exactly when I picked up that little purple book that's changed so many people's lives, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But I didn't finish it. I started it, but didn't finish it. And then a couple of years later, I actually finished the book. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like I can actually purchase properties. I can be in control and I can earn $200 to $300 a month per door. Oh, amazing. Like now I'm in control. Yeah. And so I wanted to do that, but I was living in Barcelona, Spain at the time. And so I wasn't sophisticated enough to really understand the difference between like an appreciation market and a cash flow market and all this kind of stuff. And so I started looking in Barcelona and I wanted to buy and I was ready to go and I was doing the numbers and all of a sudden I was kind of looking at this and I was like, well, hang on a second. When I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it said I could be in control and earn this amount of money per door. But I'm doing this, and it looks like I have to pay money every month to actually keep the property. And so that didn't make any sense to me. I was like, I'm not going to do all this work to then continue to pay just to get this potential payoff later on. And so I had a couple of friends that told me, they were like, well, Billy, you know what? You're actually a US citizen. So why don't you just invest in the United States? And my response has always been, and I said it to them at the time, I was like, well, do you not see the Atlantic Ocean between where I live and where the properties would be? Like, it just seemed so bizarre. And then I had a couple of friends that told me, and then I was like, well, you know what? That actually doesn't sound all that wild. And so the reason that I got into real estate, maybe a long-winded story, but was because I was frustrated with being an A student and not having any control over the financial part of my life. I read this book, changed my life, and eventually took enough action to say, oh, you know what? I'm going to live in Barcelona and I'm going to invest where it makes sense to me. I didn't have any sophistication. I didn't really know what I was doing. I made a lot of mistakes. At the same time, I made a lot of money. So that was a good thing. But I've definitely learned a lot in the last 6.5 years. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. Something I want to pick out is that you said you made a lot of mistakes, but you've also made, a lot of money along the way. It's like, what kept you moving forward with those mistakes, right? Because like a huge thing is that you are overseas. So like after one mistake, people might be like, oh, it really doesn't work from overseas. Like, I don't know if I can do this. So like, what kept you from like continuing that momentum and wanting to continue to move forward?
Yeah. So one of the things that happened for me, fortunately, is in the beginning when I got started, I was having lots of success. And that was the part where there was a lot more money coming in than I had even anticipated, right? Because of the first property that I purchased, it was really, really positive. But then I really quickly started realizing like I didn't have systems in place because although the rent checks were coming in every month, like then problems started happening later, which are always there. That's why we're actually syndicating, or that's why we are being landlords, because we're there to serve people to help solve problems. But I didn't have the foresight, but I had the money that was coming in. So that was a good thing. And then when I started having more and more problems, I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm using a lot of the same skill set that I use in my corporate job to be able to solve these problems. So I started seeing that there were a lot of transferable skills because I've led businesses of, 70 million euros across different geographies, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I've led sales teams. And it was really about like, how do I put the systems in place? And then how do I get the right people in place? And so that, I guess, having that positive first experience on cash flow and then starting realizing that there were challenges, I didn't freak out. It was more like, this is the opportunity to really go out and figure out how do we fix this and how do we make our residents happy so that they want to continue to stay, providing jobs for people that were working in the area, et cetera, et cetera.
No, that's awesome. Because, like being able to help the residents and be able to help the workers in the area, and continuing to stay is a really big motivator for us. So I'm glad that you found, I guess, that at the beginning, and then through the mistakes, it made it easier. But then even another thing that you touched on, was the whole recovering perfectionist, which I love. But we hear it very often, right? And for some people, it's analysis paralysis. For some people, it's telling themselves oh, the deal doesn't work. So how was that mindset shift for you, because looking at the numbers, they can realistically never be perfect. If you convince yourself that one number just needs to be a little bit higher, no, there's no action moving forward. So again, how did you get past that? Or what made you realize hey, for me to be able to achieve the things that I truly want in life, this is something I'm going to have to let go? Because that's a lot of internal reflection, and that's difficult for most.
Yeah, so it's definitely a difficult thing, and try saying what you said earlier 3 times really, really fast. And so one of the things that, as a recovering perfectionist, when I was going through all of my models, I was doing it on a smaller scale. So that, I guess things weren't working out, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. But this is where I drew on my corporate experience, because when you're budgeting for a year, you recognize that a pro forma is exactly that. It's kind of what you think is going to happen. And so as I got started right away, I knew that there were going to be things that probably didn't pencil out exactly like it did when I put the pro forma thing together. And so although I wasn't completely, I wasn't happy that things weren't working on the way that they were supposed to, I wasn't completely freaked out. Even when, I had a really, really bad, something that I completely overlooked on a fourplex that I bought. And this fourplex, it was I did the home inspection, right? Because I'm an A student, right? That's what you're supposed to do. That's what the books say. And so I got the home inspection, and this was the third kind of property that I purchased. And I read through the home inspection, and I just I didn't really read it, right? That was part of the challenge. I got it. And then when I got it, I looked at it, but it was when I went back and I found out that I had to pay almost $24,000 because it was saying that there was an issue with one of the roofs, and I didn't think to read that. That was like, for me, that was kind of like, Billy, you like, it was obvious, and I missed that, but it was part of the price that I had to pay, right? And so now I recognize that if you're going to get any type of inspection right now, they're not home inspections, they're much larger as part of a due diligence process and things like that. Like, whoever is going to be going through that and reading it needs to understand how to interpret that, and then be able to later say, all right, well, either I'm going to go back and we're going to talk about the terms and the conditions, or I'm going to walk away, because this is something that's big enough that it doesn't happen. I was very fortunate. It happened, and I say only 20-some thousand now, because it could have been even worse. But yeah, so just recognizing that things were pro forma'd, and having that corporate experience, at least for me, was one of the things that really helped me recognize that things were not going to be perfect. I just didn't know, you don't know what you don't know, and you try to, as much as possible, model things. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it totally does. And, like, knowing what you don't know, like, that's huge in itself, right? Like, having blind spots, like, we all have them, but we obviously have no idea what they are until issues like that come up, or until somebody tells us, or, I guess something worse could happen, but we never want it to go that way. So, like, what other blind spots, I guess, did you uncover during this time? Because, from Michael and I, we're also in the UK, we're overseas. And so I want people to know that, like, we experience the same things that people do in their backyard. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that more stuff is happening to us, that there's more risk because we're overseas. And so just, if you could touch on, like, another blind spot or two that you were like, whoa, this is something I could definitely do differently next time, that would be great.
Yeah. So, that was one thing. And even something very simple in the beginning, like just the very first property that I purchased, like, I didn't have the systems in place. So when people needed to call, there wasn't a way for them to call. So one of the things, it was like really obvious, and said, okay, well, people are there now. What are they going to do if they need to call someone? Because I didn't even have a handyman on call. So what I ended up doing was figuring out, how do we get together? How do I get an answering service? Right. Because then I started looking online, and I found out that there were answering services, and this was a number of years back, right? But that were answering the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so I hired that company, and that was the number that I gave to the residents that were living in the properties. And so no matter what time of day or night, they always had a way to call to say whatever issue was happening. But then that issue came to me, right? And so I'm 6 hours time difference, don't have the skills. And that's when I realized, okay, that's another thing. I need to make sure that I actually have a handy person, because that's the person that I needed to go. Because I opted with a place where I purchased. How do I say this? Well, there were not competent property management services available, right? And at least I didn't feel that they were the right thing. And so I built this whole thing. But those are two really concrete examples that I figured out that there was an issue, because I realized that I was missing something. And so really quickly, once again, it was figuring out who I could put in place, either a company or an individual, to be able to help to solve those problems. And once again, this is drawing on a lot of the experience that I have from the corporate side as well, which is when you have an issue, you figure it out, you go to the root cause. Once you get to the root cause, then you figure out what are the best ways to then go out and fix it to the best of your ability at that point in time. There's another, like, one of the things that I also started recognizing, just in general, like the properties, because I was really thinking about the properties and the cash flow coming in, because that was my focus in the beginning, was money. And unfortunately, that's not the focus today. But I started realizing that I needed help, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so this was the point where I was also going against my own kind of mindset, and this kind of scarcity mindset that I used to have was, I need help, but I didn't really know who to go to. And then I eventually decided to go through a paid mentorship program, because that was one of the things that helped me also start to take my thinking to another level, and also start to take my game to another level. And that helped me to see blind spots, Susie, to answer your question, that I didn't even recognize that I had. And I probably would not have recognized those unless I would have made that choice to either spend a lot of time following a whole bunch of people, or just pick the person that I thought was the right mentor for me at the time, and allow that person to understand me a lot better, and then also be able to help me foresee kind of some of the things that could happen down the road.
And just to follow up on that, Billy, the mentorship program that you chose, was it because of the systems and processes that they had built in their business and you wanted to like mirror that or mimic that? Or was it they were also long distance investing? Or like, how did you end up choosing that specific person? Were they the same? Were they looking at single family homes like you were investing in, or what?
Yeah, well, at the time I went down the path because it was someone that I was following their program and I was a part of what they were doing, and there was just a lot of confidence. And also because, and this is just something, this is very personal to me, the type of a mentorship program, because of the investment that was needed.
Yeah.
It was a high enough of investment that it caused me pain to actually really get focused on it. Like had it been I don't want to put, because everybody has different thresholds, but let's just say it was a very, very, some would perceive as a very, very high cost. I saw it as a high investment, but I needed that to focus and really start to understand what they were going to teach me. And so that was the thing that worked for me. I wasn't really thinking about like if the person was doing it long distance or not, although that was a part of the element, but it was more knowing that individual at the time had a lot more knowledge, know-how, and experience than I did.
Yeah, and that was something like how we chose as well, right? Because it took us a little bit in order to find one. And so like we followed a couple of people in the space, and it was like, which one like has more knowledge, which one like is producing content where like it allows me to grow and like think outside of my box. And so that was like a huge thing for us when we decided as well. But something too I want to touch on that you said earlier is that your focus has changed, and so what is your focus today? If it was cash flow, what is it now?
So, and I guess it was more about just making money. Like that's what I wanted to do, because my pain was, as a recovering perfectionist, like I did what I was supposed to do and I was not actually making the money. Like I lost the money. I was doing what I was supposed to do. And so I was trying to figure out like, how can I be getting more money? And so when you start to realize that the ability to create more currency, it's almost like a game, like, right? I mean, there are board games that teach you how to play this, like Cash Flow 101, for instance, is one that I love, one that I play with my kids. There's a kids version, stuff like that. And so once I realized that it's actually just a game, then it became, all right, well, how can I now start to really do the things that I really am passionate about? How can I really start to create relationships with the people that I really want to create relationships with? How can I create the quality of life that I really want to create, and do that in a way that makes sense for me? And I say that coming from a very humble family. Like both of my parents worked 2 jobs. I was surrounded by a lot of people that had things that I didn't think that I could ever even afford. So I know what it's like to watch parents go paycheck to paycheck. And then now living in a very different extreme, you start realizing like, yes, money, currency, it's very important. Anybody that says it's not is probably never seen 2 parents work 2 jobs and have to do that kind of stuff. But there's a lot more to life. Like you having a quality of life and being able to do the things that you want to do with the people that you want to do when you want to do it. Mm-hmm. It goes way beyond the amount of money that you make. I'm surrounded by a lot of people and they make a lot of money, but they're not necessarily happy. They are, stuck in doing things that they don't really want to do, and because they've gone beyond they've just gotten into a certain lifestyle and they don't necessarily love what they're doing. And that's unfortunate. I happen to like what I'm doing in my corporate job, and I love what I'm doing outside of it, right? Which is probably one of the reasons that people say, how do you keep doing all this stuff all the time? So, but anyway.
Well, they say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So it never feels like work. Yeah. So I reached that. I was lucky to reach that position in my life several years ago when I started teaching, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. Yeah. With investing, people were asking us, like, how are you syndicating from overseas? Like we spend all of our extra time that we have doing it, right? Yeah. You're like, well, what do you do for fun? I'm like, this is fun for us. Yeah. We love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you touch on something that is super important, because when you are doing things that you enjoy, you could do them forever. Like there are moments where I have to even stop myself because I love the interaction and being able to talk to people and understand what are their real goals and their needs and their desires that they have in life, and being able to see if there is a way that I can help them to solve that. And I'm usually doing that as well through some type of syndication of some type of tangible asset that helps them to get what they want. And so I could talk to people forever about that kind of stuff, because you're talking to them about their lives, about their goals, about their dreams. You're not talking to them about the KPI that they have at their job, or the MBOs that they have at their job, or the budget that they have to spend because it's whatever. You're talking about them and their lives. And that's really, really cool. Like that for me goes way beyond money and being focused on money, because you're talking about people and things that are really important to them.
Absolutely. And so like, I know a big thing for us, right, is that like we see the time difference as an advantage. So like we can do our traditional 9 to 6, and then it is, you know, the afternoon in our market. So like, how do you, I don't want to say balance, but like, how do you mix that in with your family, you know, like in your wife and your children? How does that all blend and work together?
Yeah. So, and you said it right, like, cause I don't know if there really is a balance, but it's how do you make things work? And so one of the things that I guess I'm really fortunate, I don't sleep a lot. And so, but the very little that I do sleep, like I sleep really, really soundly, and I like my sleep, the little bit that I do have. And I've been reading some books, and I'm like, well, you've got to try and sleep even more. I've read this book, Free to Focus, and you've got to get 7 hours or 8 hours, but I don't really need that. But I get up really, really early. So sometimes, I go, I'm up at 4:45, 5 o'clock, 5:30 is kind of late. And I get a lot of things done. I get my exercise in. I'm a big believer in the Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod. So I go through my savers every single morning, and I'll usually go out 3 days a week and get some running in. And then I come back and I'm reading and I'm working on my business and I'm working on what I can do. And then I take my kids to school. And then from there, it's really about focusing on my corporate role, because that's another thing that I like to do. And I focus on that, and then there gets to a certain point in the day where I stop doing that, and I'm usually going back to my business. And I get back home and I'm a couple hours with the kids. Well, now for recently, I've been at home all the time, but now,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean. So, and then towards the end of the day, I will do that, and then I also like spending time with my wife at the end of the day, and then from there, I may go back and I'll start to read some books, and then I'll crash out and I'll start it again the next day. So I don't. I know a lot of people, they get up and they start working at 9 and they're up at 8:30 or 8:45, and they're working and they're finished at 6, and they're, having a beer at 6:30, and they're in bed at 10, 11, and they start over and they watch TV for those last couple hours. I don't tend to do all that stuff.
Yeah. The big thing that's been part of our success is just, we choose not to have a TV just because of the distractions it can cause, right? Because it's so easy just to turn on the TV or whatever. But as you can see behind us, we have a bunch of books.
Yep.
We love reading, and that's what we do. And we're a huge follower of Hal Elrod as well. We do our savers every morning too. Together, and it's awesome. Like we scribe in it together, and then we read our what our goals are for today, what we're grateful for, and stuff like that, which is really awesome.
No, that's phenomenal. Yeah. And it's interesting, Susie, because you mentioned before the time change. And I guess until I started building out my team, the time difference in the very beginning, it was kind of a struggle for me, because I wanted to make sure that I was able to, and I say me, able to serve the tenants, the residents back stateside, which meant staying up really, really late and then getting up early. And they kept going on and on and on. But now that there is a team in place and in different kind of time zones and people that are stateside and here, and having the right systems we're constantly improving, like they're not perfect, but we're constantly improving them, and having the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins would say, that is something now that is really I'm starting to see 6 years later that it's working really, really well. And that quality of life and that getting to the lifestyle I want to build is getting closer and closer and closer every day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Billy. I think, the theme that you're saying there is like having the right team in place where you want to invest, right? So whether that's a boots on the ground person or whether it's your property management company, right? And so, that's huge for us. Like, we will never change a market until we know that the property management company that we want is there. Like, a lot of people are like, let's just choose a market because the real estate there is hot. Like, we won't choose another market until we know that we have a good property management company in place first, and then we'll start looking at deals. And
I love you say that, because one of the things, and maybe Susie, this ties back into what we were talking about before, but one of the biggest kind of failure events that happened to me was I bought my first properties because I had money, and I bought it in a place where I had family. Like there was no more thought than that. Like, I have money. I wanted to take action. I took action. But then I started realizing, like, the place that I was in wasn't necessarily aligned with what I wanted to do in terms of the return or the benefit. And I wasn't really in the right location. And so I got the property and it was all really combobulated or discombobulated and just wasn't making sense. And so one of the things that I now teach other people is saying, okay, first and foremost, you really have to understand personally, what is it that you want to be able, what benefit do you want to derive? Like, do you want some type of, and I know that you all talk about this as well a lot, which is, are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for some type of equity buildup? Do you want some type of appreciation over a long period of time? Or do you need tax benefits, right? Which are kind of the major blocks. And then once you're clear on what it is that the benefit that you want to derive, then you find the location that gives you the highest probability of being able to get that benefit. And then once you find that location, and this is the whole thing about a long distance investor, and I think a lot of times people don't really understand, and it is really the team. Like, the team is the most critical part of being able to be an effective long distance investor, because once you have the right, like, you're clear on what you want to do, you're in the right location, and you have a team that understands the location and what you want to be able to do as an individual or as in a team, then it doesn't matter if the next property that you put in your portfolio is 300 units. It doesn't matter if it's 50 units. It doesn't matter if it's ATM machines. It doesn't matter if it's energy equipment, because everything is aligned. Like, but you have to make sure that the team understands whatever opportunity you're bringing on board. Like, they do need to understand that part, so it keeps everything in line. Because if it's not in line, it makes it really, really difficult to operate effectively and give the benefits that your investors or your residents are looking for. So yeah, without a doubt, team is the most critical part of the four pieces.
No, and you know what I love is that, like, when you're saying that, like, everything feels all aligned, it, like, goes even beyond that team, right? Because when your team is aligned, then they can focus on the residents and the families that you serve. And when they're aligned and all of that is, like, has a great flow and everything is harmonized, then that goes into your family life, right? Because you then don't have stress, and, like, your whole family is aligned with this process and everything that you're doing. Because, you know, like, there are some late nights and there are some early mornings, but, like, right now, that sacrifice, you know, to create that perfect alignment, or, you know, close to perfect alignment, to me is, like, all worth it at the end. Because when you can create that harmony in other people's lives and then in your life, like, it ripples in multiple directions, right? Because, like, that family and that resident now can, like, since they're not stressed out about their basic need of shelter, they can continue that great ripple. And, like, when you have more time with your children and your wife, that ripple effect keeps going and going and going. And so I love that you use that word, because the team is, like, the people on the ground. That's how important it is, because that beautiful ripple then has the opportunity to be able to, like, I don't know, soak in with everyone else. And it's just, so beautiful when it actually happens.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you're right. There's always some element of sacrifice that you have to make sure that things are aligned. And so you do that work up front so that later that ripple effect can continue. I love that one. Can I use that in the future?
Yeah.
Susie, the ripple effect? All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Billy, we are getting towards the end of the show, which brings us to the Adventurous Four. These are 4 exploratory questions we ask every single guest. And so the first question we have for you, Billy, is, where is one place you wish to travel and why?
So this is kind of easy for me, believe it or not. And so I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a chance to travel throughout 86 countries in my life.
Wow.
I've been very, very fortunate. This depends on who you talk to. I have had a chance to visit 6 of the 7 continents on Earth. I guess if you're in Europe, there are only 5, but we won't get into that right now. But I'll use the U.S. side of my brain right now. And the one place I've been very, very close, I went to Ushuaia in the south of Argentina, and I was in the Tierra del Fuego, but I didn't actually make it across to Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And so in order to get to the 7th continent, going to Antarctica is the place that I will visit. I don't know when yet, but it is a place that I will visit.
That's very cool.
Awesome. I would like to join you for that trip.
Awesome.
How to get to Antarctica, and like where you mentioned, you can take a ship. I think there's certain times of the year where you can travel by plane, but it's just it's a challenge for sure.
Yes. Yeah. You have to do that. And if you don't go by plane, I actually want to go on the water, but the thing is you have to go at the right time of the year, because if not, it can be a really, really treacherous trip. And, we'll save that part for another day.
Awesome. And the second question is, what is the number one thing on your bucket list, and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it?
Yeah, so the one thing on my bucket list is to freely be able to live between Europe and the United States, and being able to do that in a way that makes the most sense for me and my family, and do it whenever we want. And the way that we are leveraging real estate is just the fact that this extremely powerful set of assets, and being able to help people see that the benefits that can be derived from that, we're able to create a business and adding value to other people, is the way that we're working towards that bucket list. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, it does. I love it. Cool. The third question is, what is one piece of advice for someone who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
The one thing I would say is you have to actually get started and actually just do it, because you can, as Susie and Michael, you were both saying earlier, you can get in this analysis paralysis, and probably the most effective way to do it is find the person, similar way that you all were talking about earlier, like who's the mentor that you want to find, like who is the group or the individuals that resonate the most with you, that are doing things that you want to be doing, that create that trust environment for you. And then be able to follow them and be able to engage with them, and make sure that whoever you are going to work with as a passive investor, that person or that team is able to answer the questions that you want answered in the way that makes sense for you. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
A lot of mine would be through educating individuals who don't come from, an environment where you can see what is truly possible, and really help people. And for me, it's more like, kind of to draw it down, is to help people with financial literacy, because I see it every single day. Like, we're surrounded by so many people that earn a lot of money, and realize how little we're taught about the financial system and the way that financial literacy really works. And I would like to, and I don't know if everyone would even be open to that, because so many people are just like I used to be, like the A students, and they just want to follow this track because it's the easiest track. But unlimited resources to help other people, and those people that are interested in really understanding how they can build their financial literacy, because ultimately that's what's going to free them and allow them to do the things that they want to do with the people that they love, like, and do it when they want to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So before we end the show, Billy, would you mind sharing with our listeners how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a number of different ways. If you all are up for that, there's a podcast, and so the podcast is probably one of the best ways to do that, and it's the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels. I'd love to continue to have more people listen and be a part of the things that Michael and Susie, that we're all doing, right? Which is being able to invest long distance, and can't wait to see the two of you, or have everybody listen to the two of you share your story as well. For people that actually want to get just in touch and have a phone call conversation, you can go to bit.ly/speak with Billy. And if anybody just wants to find out more about long distance investing, I've shared a couple of mistakes here with everybody today. I would say that you can go to Billy Keels, it's BILLYKEELS.com/7 and then mistakes. And you can go there. And one last thing, as Susie mentioned, I like LinkedIn. And I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn, and do like Susie did in the beginning. Like, let me know where that you heard Susie and Michael and I talk here, because that way it gives us a point of departure, and we can continue the conversation there. And also, Michael and Susie, thank you so very much for the opportunity to share just a little bit of my story with this awesome community and tribe that you're building.
Yeah, and thank you for being on. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so happy that we got to connect. And I'm just really thankful that you are, part of our tribe as well. So thank you for being here with us today.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Billy's being modest, but his podcast is awesome. Definitely go check that out and give it a listen. It's really great. He has some really awesome guests on there.
Thanks, Michael.
So Thank you so much, Billy. I really appreciate your time. It's a pleasure having you on here, like Susie mentioned. So until next time, explore more. Adventure awaits.